But I do like everyone in person. Okay, Madam Chair, we are live on YouTube.
Welcome everyone to the Environmental Committee meeting. Today's date is March 18th, 2025, and it is 7:05. So we would like to introduce Drasana Hughes, who is here from the Brooklyn DEP, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm getting.
So new Brooklyn Commissioner
Yes.
Welcome.
Department of, so welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. As Tracy said, I'm the new Brooklyn Borough Commissioner for DEP. So started 6 weeks ago. So very, very new to the job. But one of the first things I wanted to do was go around and come and meet every single community board, let folks know that I'm accessible, that I'm here, that I'm eager to get started and to help with issues in the community that are DEP related. So today I'm going to give the Flooding 101 presentation that some folks on this call may be familiar with. You may have heard this before. You may be homeowners yourself. You may know all of this already. For other folks, it may be new, and some of our initiatives are newer. So I wanted to take that opportunity to go through the presentation. I try to keep it like efficient to 15, 16 minutes. But please, at the end, if you have questions about a certain slide, we can go back. I've just found that I don't want to regurgitate information that folks know already, and I want to make sure the time is best spent. So after I finish, I will take lots of questions. I will definitely not be able to answer all of them, but we'll come back. And the hope is that this is an ongoing relationship that I can present in front of this committee frequently and come back and answer questions that folks may have. And also my colleague, Denise is here on the call that I know you're familiar with. And she will also hop in if there's something she knows, and we're both taking notes. So if that sounds good, I will get started. Great. I may need you to, my laptop battery is low. So if it comes in to your email, just be prepared to.
Okay.
Okay. So apologies for that. I'll be much more tech prepared next time. Great. So I'm going to start sharing now and assume folks can see my screen unless told otherwise. Okay, great. So hopefully I don't jump off. If not, Josephine will come in with the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we just like to start off with this information about the fact that New York City was reclassified recently by NOAA, which is a national organization that oversees how we understand climate. And so this is no surprise to anyone on this call, but we are going to continue getting more and more storms. And once we became humid subtropical, that means our rainfall is projected to increase even more. The effects of this is sea level rise. It affects our tides. It affects the frequency we get storms. When we get storms, it affects exactly how much downpour happens. So this is something DEP is aware of and that we're concerned about and we continue to plan for. So I'd just like to start off the presentation with that kind of level setting. The types of flooding that we're focused on at DEP and that I'll review in these presentation are 3 types. One is coastal flooding. It's kind of self-explanatory, flooding that comes from the coast and from being in a coastal community. One is stormwater, also kind of self-explanatory, that we're talking about rain or things that come from above and how that can affect you. And then the third is groundwater, which a lot of people don't know about, but all of New York City is most houses are set upon groundwater. So that means there's water already under your basement that when agitated can come up, either being agitated by the coast or stormwater. And so it's something that we also look out for, and it's a third type of flooding. The sewers, this is what DEP spends most of our time doing and what probably everyone on this call knows a lot about already. But sewers protect, believe it or not, in 98% of rain events, sewers are working and they are protecting us. It's these 2% of rain events that are extreme: Hurricane Sandy, Ida, and even less than that, even rainstorms that can happen every day. The sewer network is built to handle about 1.75 inches of rain per hour. And some of those bigger storms we're talking about can go up to 2 inches per hour, even 3 inches per hour. So once you exceed the 1.5 to 1.75, that's where we get into hairy territory, where our existing sewer network is not strong enough to handle, and we can have sewer backups, which I'll get to in a minute. But basically, when our sewers are overwhelmed, it's greater than the capacity of the pipes. And because of climate change, because of that we've been reclassified, we're seeing more increased amounts of this. So this is nothing new to New York, but we will see increased frequency, and that's important to note. So really quick, I think I've been surprised by how many people know this and also by how many people don't. So I just think it's important to talk about like what sewer backups are and why they happen. So most of New York City is combined sewers. I believe most of Community Board 10 is combined sewers. So what that means is storm water, the water that comes from storms, and wastewater from flushing your toilet, washer, dryer, and using the sink, that goes into the same place. And so on a dry weather day, that means when we're not having a storm, our sewers are more than able to handle the capacity of New York City and even increased development. Like on a dry weather day, our sewers are totally able to handle that. What happens is we have a storm, we have increased storms, and we have storms of even more magnitude, and that's where we run into capacity issues. But because they're combined sewers, both of that can come up. And that floods like catch basins, so it comes back into the street. That's one way of flooding, and then it also can flood an actual owner's basement. And so that's where we really want to get involved by helping homeowners think about what you can do to mitigate that type of flooding, and also just being on top of it and letting the community board elected officials know that this is a thing that can happen. So we'll get a little more into what we can do about SBUs. We want to talk about groundwater flooding as well. So some of the areas in the city have naturally high groundwater, and after back-to-back storms or heavy rain, it can trigger groundwater, and that's separate from a sewer backup. So DEP can kind of, we can help, we can get involved when there's a sewer backup. When groundwater happens, that's a hard thing to mitigate, and it's different. And so if you email me and my response is, this might be groundwater, or we're testing for groundwater, that's what we mean by that. And there's a bunch of things you can do as a homeowner about groundwater as well that we're getting to. But you can see it's a natural phenomena of like having a home on the earth and in New York. And so that can get triggered by storms, but it's technically separate. And then coastal flooding, same thing. It can send water back up into the sewer system. This is an issue in a lot of community boards, and we have some big projects in Red Hook and in other areas to mitigate this. But these are the type of big flooding infrastructure projects that we build floodgates or flood walls. There's a big one happening in Manhattan now as well to mitigate tidal flooding. And there's, not a lot an individual person can do about that. But there's 3, those are just kind of going over the 3 types. So this is a video of coastal flooding just to show you how much of an issue it can be when it comes. So this is from, I believe, Sandy, and you can see how far it can reach into a neighborhood if we don't have adequate walls. We haven't raised the coastlines, that type of thing. So this is like a real aerial image. And so this is the type of work we're dealing with at DEP. When we have another superstorm Sandy, we want to help prevent these types of events. So now the last one is hurricane season. We're trying to be much more like I don't know if you've seen this in some of the communications that come out, but we're trying to be very aggressive, and I'll get into this at the end of the presentation about things you can sign up for to be aware when a hurricane is coming, to be aware if you're in an area, which most of Brooklyn is, where we should be aware and alert and proactive about hurricane season, and what DEP can do to know ahead of time about some of the problem areas and floods as they're happening in real time. So this is a big issue over the summer into the fall, and it's something that we're particularly focused on as well. Great. So now I'm going to go into what we can do to combat a lot of these things. Talking about gray, green, and blue infrastructure. and then how we kind of monitor these things in real time to see how we can divert our resources in real time to help homeowners and to help the community. So I showed this slide already, but it's just to reiterate, sewers are the first line of defense, and we have a 10-year capital plan. We're investing $8 billion over the next 10 years in sewer system upgrades. Not immediately in Community Board 10, but a lot of them nearby. And these communities are all interconnected and related to each other. So one thing I've been doing, and I'm happy to do, is see what, if any, capital upgrades we have scheduled in Community Board 10, and just kind of hear your guys' flags about areas you feel flood frequently or need upgrades and investment. Green, darn it. Can we pull it up for
Okay. We
here.
lost Tara. Okay,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
see. Hold on.
I can keep talking about green infrastructure while we get it up and running, and apologies that my computer died. Great, amazing. So green infrastructure, as folks may know, is like rain gardens, porous pavement, and these are like smaller infrastructure investments we can make in communities that really help with mitigating stormwater. So rain gardens, we can build them on the side of the sidewalk. They can also be built in the middle of a street. And then porous pavement, same thing. We can replace concrete, which is not soluble, so it doesn't really take in water, with something called porous pavement that does. And these are really important ways that we want to use in addition to the sewers. So you can go 2 slides from here. There you go. Yep. We have built a ton of these around Brooklyn. There are a few in construction on the side area of Community Board 10, but I didn't see too many. But I'm happy to go back and look through what our GI investments are in the area, but they help reduce heat and they help take water in. So they're a big kind of another line of defense we have in addition to the sewers themselves across the city. You can go to the next slide. So porous pavement, which I talked about a little bit, it's a special roadway paving that's designed to absorb water. We're adding 35 miles into Brooklyn. I don't know exactly where, but can come back and get you guys some more information on that. But porous pavement is great because in areas where we can't put in a rain garden for one reason or another, we can put in this pavement and it can help be another line of defense. You can go to the next slide.
I see it.
Okay, so flood net sensors, we've invested 7 million in so far, and we have 500 across the 5 boroughs. I'm working really hard to get more in Brooklyn. We do not have as many in Brooklyn, I think, as some other boroughs, but what these do is they can tell us in real time what streets are flooding and what sewers are flooding. And that's great because we do have a field team. We have there are 2 field offices that they get deployed from in Brooklyn. And so if we know ahead of time where an area is becoming overrun, we can send them there quickly, as opposed to waiting for 311s, waiting to get information from elected officials and community boards. We lose precious time. And so these sensors are very exciting, and we're in the process of putting a lot more up. You can go to the next slide. The unified stormwater rule is also another exciting development. It basically says, if you have new development, or even if you're redeveloping or updating a property, it has to include stormwater management on site. And so this is really great because any development or new area of the city that's being built that's benefiting from all of that growth, should give back to the city in its ability to manage stormwater. And so we are working through enforcement of this rule, working closely with community boards and elected officials on this. If you have questions about this, you should ask me, because it's really a Herculean effort to get developers and folks smart on this, understanding what it is and making sure that the buildings are implementing it correctly. So we wanted to make sure that to include this new rule in the presentation, because just because it exists doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but it's a group effort to make sure that buildings are complying and that they're doing the best possible. So whether that's stormwater on the roof, whether it's porous concrete outside the building, rain gardens, etc., we can get them to pay for it. That can help the community as well. Go to the next slide. So coastal resilience infrastructure, this is mainly applicable in Red Hook for the time being, but I did want to talk about it here in case you all had questions. The things that we're investing in as a city is raising the height of the land. So literally going to the edge and raising the height of land to match sea level rise, walls or gates. I saw the first floodgates operational floodgates in Manhattan a few weeks ago. They're very cool. They can bring it up or down in real time based on what's happening. And so investing in these in Brooklyn, wave breaks and reinforcing shorelines. These are all tools at our disposal. They require lots of money and investment, but DEP is totally taking definitely a new approach. If you go to the next slide, you can see we have a new Bureau of Coastal Resilience. So working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to really think how we can reinforce our coastlines. And a lot of that is Brooklyn. I can just tell you in my 6 weeks working here, I've been or asked to be on a lot of calls with these folks because it's an issue that affects Brooklyn just as much as it does Manhattan, Queens, and the Bronx. So this new Bureau will continue to work on this effort and kind of figure out how to fortify our coasts. You go to the next slide. So this next slide is about what homeowners can do. I think this will be helpful just for you all as you talk to your communities. And also sometimes me and Denise will respond with some of this information. And I just want to be proactive about explaining what it is so you don't feel like, oh, they're just telling us this or that. Like this is a big part of our toolkit as DEP. So you go to the next slide. First is really educating folks about their basements and making sure your basements aren't illegal, like they're correct. And kind of doing everything you can to update your basement, even if it is following all the rules to make sure that it can mitigate stormwater in the best way. So like kind of base level things, it's like bathroom fixtures shouldn't be lower than your sewer connection. If there is a sewer backup, that means that sewage could come up into your bathtub or your toilet or your sink. And so where your bathroom fixture is located is very helpful. Basements that are below a sidewalk or a driveway are extra prone to flooding because of where they're located. And also making sure you have 2 exits, that there aren't bars on your windows. Those things from a safety perspective are really important because flooding can happen very fast. And so if you do happen to have a basement that is situated this way, it happens really fast. You have bars on your windows, you can get into a very tough situation there. Let's go to the next slide. Rerouting your downspout. This is another thing that we've been asking folks to do. If your downspout is located in a way where the water, it's easy for water and rainwater to go back into your home or to go down into more vulnerable parts of your building, that can increase the amount of stormwater that floods into your basement. Whereas if you put the downspouts so they're pushing outwards or they're up above your basement, that can create for a better stormwater management from the homeowner's perspective. Go to the next slide. Rain barrels are wonderful. So basically what they do is they connect to your home's gutter and they keep water out of our sewer. So this is kind of like a community thing. If everybody installed rain barrels, it would provide a first line of defense before the sewer itself gets overrun. And you can use that water to water plants outside to take by. So it's not drinking water, but it's definitely water that you could use for other things you're doing outside. And if everyone had one of these, the barrel would collect water first before it goes into the sewer. And we as a city, we would be protecting a little bit of our capacity. So that's something that we encourage folks to get and install. You can go to the next slide. You can get your own flood sensor in your basement. The reason why this is helpful is, let's say there's a storm in the middle of the night, you're sleeping upstairs. It seems like pitter patter, but it's way more aggressive. This can beep. You can get it at Home Depot. Think they're anywhere between $25, $50, and they can tell you where you're sleeping. There's water coming up in your basement. Make sure to move your belongings, or make sure to have someone go down there and check it out. This is really, really, really great from the homeowner's perspective. So we really encourage it at DEP. We'll go to the next slide. And then the last thing is flood barriers. These can be filled with water or sand. So if you do have one of those low basements, your door is low to the ground. Like I said, we get into hairy territory as a city when it gets above 2 inches per hour. So we are talking about inches in some of these cases. So these barriers are effective, and we found they're very effective near doors and garages. You can go to the next slide. Sump pumps, we hope to do some events, and we'll let the community board know this summer, where the city will provide some sump pumps, but they're also, you can kind of get them at a Home Depot, and you can put them in your basement. If the water rises above a certain level, they can help pump the water out. These are really, really great to also mitigate flooding when flooding events happen in your home. You can go to the next slide. Great, so these next few slides are just like best practices that help us as a city not overrun our sewers when these events happen. One is waiting to use water. So like massive rainstorm and you decide right now I'm going to do all my laundry from the week. Like maybe hold off on that because it's all going in the same place because you have a combined sewer. So if everyone decides to do their laundry at the same time, plus the storm happening, that's when we kind of get these backups in basements and flooding on the street. So waiting to use water is something I did not know before I started this job, and it's like a little way you can help contribute in these special events. And then we can go to the next slide in ever moment. Thank you so much, Josephine.
No.
Trash it, don't flush it. So the city spends $18 million a year dealing with folks who put the wrong thing in the toilet. I can tell you for 6 weeks, I've been dealing with this already. And so like, there's no such thing as a flushable wipe. They all say flushable wipes on them in Dwayne Reed and CVS, and it drives me nuts now because I know it's not true. So please don't put these things in the sewer. It increases the likelihood that there'll be a backup in your community, and makes it tough for everybody. You can go to the next slide. We're almost done here. So there's a few apps like that we're going to plug because they will alert you when it's high tide or there's some bigger storm that we're planning for that's intense. One is NOAA. So that was the organization I mentioned at the beginning that reclassified New York City as human subtropical. And we're looking for storms that have greater than 1.5 inches per hour. Those are the types of storms that we're alerted to internally at DEP that this may cause the sewer to reach capacity. We'll go to the next slide. Here we're going to talk about flood insurance. One is just flood insurance for your home. Not every home in New York City is eligible for flood insurance, which is frustrating. But we do encourage folks to check if you are, because if you are, it changes the game if something happens to your home. These incidents can be $50,000, $100,000 worth of damage. So you really, really want to make sure you're insured. And even if you're a home that doesn't usually flood, like I said, New York was reclassified. These storms are increasing in intensity. It could be yours. So making sure your home has flood insurance is very important. If you go to the next slide, this is insurance specifically for your sewer service line. And this could not even be a flooding incident. Like a lot of the sewer service lines in New York City are very old. Some of them are lead and need to be replaced. And so if you get insurance for your service line, it's like $15, $20 a month, and it protects you from when you might have to change your sewer service line. That's about $10,000 on the individual person. And we see it happen all the time. And it could be the service line, it's just been a long time, it wasn't replaced. It could be your neighbor's service line got messed up and it affected your service line all of a sudden because of groundwater or something. And so it could be no fault of your own. But if you don't have this insurance, it ends up being a lot of personal expense. So I believe DEP actually sent out mailers to homeowners about this recently, like really encouraging folks to sign up for the service line insurance, which is separate from flood insurance because it's not technically a flood and it can help you with that big expense. And this is an example of someone with a broken service line and having sewage back into their bathtub. So your evacuation zone is good. We put this on this affects certain communities more than others, but we put this on everyone just because knowing your plan ahead of time, if there is a crazy storm, if the flooding reaches a certain area where you can't be in your home, it's important to know about that. And I'm happy to come back with more detail about that for Community Board 10 if that's something that would interest you all. It's the last resort, obviously, but it's just important to know these things. Let me go to the next slide. This is like the biggest thing. I really, really think everyone should. And even if you don't want to get the text message, if you do Twitter, I would follow NICEM on Twitter because they really, they have access to all the systems we have access to. If there's a water main break, if there's a flood, if there's a niche issue happening, but it's affecting water. Sometimes like this is like even quicker at getting information than other areas that you would think. So I really, really encourage folks to sign up for that as well. I believe that's the last slide. Great. So we can go back to any of the slides if folks have questions. I know I went through it fast. And then also happy to answer any of your other DEP related questions. Even if I can't answer them, Denise and I will take them back. And thank you for listening to me babble for a long time.
Thank you.
So I'll stop share.
Mhm.
Thank you. That was great. So we could see everyone.
Does anyone have any questions from Zoom?
I have a question.
You have a question?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Elizabeth has a question. You could go first.
Okay. So, and I'm sorry, I delved into this a lot after our tour, which was like so helpful of Owl's Head. But one of the things that was really shocking to learn was that we have these combined sewers where there's formaldehyde and things coming from all of the funeral homes and all the medical waste, including blood, and then all the restaurant waste, like cooking oil, is all going into the sewer system. And so one of the things that I started to look at is, does that mean that if your sewer backs up, that stuff is coming into your house, And I was wondering if, given the increased likelihood of all this, with the climate change and the fact that the groundwater is rising and everything, and the increasing frequency and severity of the storms, I mean, is DEP thinking about doing anything to maybe limit? I know in other municipalities, they have a limit on some of these, like if you have a funeral home, it has to go into its own waste separate sewer. It doesn't go into the combined sewer that could back up. So I was just wondering if that's something that we're thinking about. And the reason I'm asking in part is because the area around Owl's Head has, according to the borough president's report, like a high incidence of illness compared to the rest of the city. And so it just seems like something that maybe we need to start thinking about. I don't know. Sorry for the long question.
No, that's not a long question. It's a good question. I'll have to get back to you about the formaldehyde and all the extra stuff. I don't know too much about that. I do know that like not every sewer backup is created equal. Like sometimes it's treated water, sometimes it's not treated water. So I would just want to figure out a little bit more about Owl's Head specifically before I say the wrong thing, and I'll get back to you. And like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the just to say your question back to you, there's a lot of different types of liquid material that goes into the sewers altogether. If there's a backup, does that all come back into the homeowner? Is the question.
That's right. Yeah. And is there something that maybe we should consider doing about it in light of, the increased risks through climate change? And thank you so much for the presentation. We really appreciate it.
Sure. Got it.
Josephine, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, so I could share with you that over the years, we have great concerns with certain areas of the district that experience street level flooding and sewer backups, mostly during wet weather events, but sometimes in dry weather events, especially those communities that are close by to the shoreline.
Okay.
Because we have, in addition to old sewer pipes, we have very old CSOs, which in a very tough coastal storm can, people can experience during high tide. So we really pay close attention, especially the area below Ridge Boulevard. So stormwater capture is really important. And I guess what's increasingly frustrating, is the amount of homeowners who pave over their front gardens, whether it's for a carport, legal or illegal, or just not knowing that, that it's not really good, and we want to maximize that stormwater capture. And I'm just wondering if since it happens more and more and enforcement is so difficult, if there are talks with DEP and Department of Buildings to kind of work together, whether in an education campaign, because we've thought about this, to really spread the word that, I think it should be permitted, actually. I don't think you should be able to pave over your front garden without a permit. It's been something that this board has advocated for in the past, and I was just curious if there are new developments in that regard, since there's so much focus now being put on improving stormwater capture and a lot of green infrastructure, that be included as well, because we see it here more and more, and it's very frustrating to even sometimes it's the buildings department that is the agency that responds
Yeah.
to a complaint about a paved over front garden.
Yeah.
How
How does buildings respond when you reach out about that?
usually
It's a homeowner, we can't do anything.
it's a homeowner, or
Yeah.
if there is a violation, it's one that can take 2 years to adjudicate, and you can't make another complaint in that
In the
meantime.
time. Yeah.
And you know, when the streetscape tax amendment was first adopted, it was great because it's 25% of your front garden, which when you see what 25% looks like, it's such a small piece. I would really wish, given what we know now, some of the education that be, you know, probably brought into 50% at least.
Yeah.
Because we're just seeing in the district a lot of you know, loss of this garden space and thinking, and I share this with some of my colleagues in conversation at, you know, at different meetings.
Yeah.
So maybe as a project down the road, whether for this board or, you know, working with our colleagues and certainly both agencies to educate homeowners on.
No, it's funny. I was at CB17 yesterday. This was the first thing they said. Very different neighborhood than yours.
Right.
Same issue. They're like, we lose the greenery, we
Yeah.
lose the stormwater management. They're selling a parking space or whatever the purpose is for
Right.
it.
Mhm.
And I mean, yeah, in my role, it's incredibly frustrating to hear about. I haven't been able to even investigate it for them yet, but now I have 2 community boards asking, which is all the
Right.
more urgency. So I appreciate you raising it, and we'll definitely get back about
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
For something like that too, is there a consumer, like a porous pavement that's
For
available to
consumers, that's a good
consumers?
question.
Mhm.
That's a good question. Yeah. I will look up that too. I would imagine if it's available to us, it's available to others.
Yeah, I just wasn't
Yeah.
sure if it was something that was manufactured for
Yeah,
you.
special or not. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know either, but that would be a great, that would be
Yeah,
great.
like
That would
whatever's
be-
porous, as long
Yeah.
as there's stormwater capture, I mean,
Right.
I prefer greenery because
Yeah.
aesthetically, but I think if it accomplishes the goal, I think that's great.
Yeah,
Josephine, I just want to add rear yards to your point.
Rear yards as well, yes.
Yeah.
that's another area where it's
Yeah,
happening.
yes.
Got it.
Question here.
Yes, Larry?
Larry?
I wrote down about on the illustration of the coastal resilience infrastructure, elevated and reinforced structures, shorelines. There was no railing or wall against the walkway. You can see it just right over the water. People are gonna fall right into the water. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I know that in the photo.
Alright.
That's in the photo, yeah.
That be getting a little confusing if that's just people who just fall into the water. And also CSO combines, what are combined sewer overflow tanks? You know, in Canarsie, there's a huge tank there, takes the excess runoff. Is that in the presentation?
It's not in the presentation, but do you have a question about them or
This is, you know, the whole thing was this is to take the overflow because the wastewater plants were not designed to, you know, when they're overloaded. That's some example of what's happening with the, you know, the presentation didn't make any no mention of the combined sewer overflow tanks. That's part of the item, managing the water.
Definitely. And I think you know, we're building a tunnel in Newtown Creek. That's gonna help with that wastewater facility. We're building a CSO tank in Gowanus that's gonna help there. And Owl's Head as well. Not Owl's Head, the wastewater treatment facility, a different Owl's Head, they need a separate name. But yeah, I'm super aware of the ones that we're currently constructing in Brooklyn, and I think they're gonna be extremely helpful to prevent overflow, like exactly what you were talking about. Yeah, so we definitely should add those in the presentation as a way that we're mitigating.
Maybe also combined, the old adage about combined sewers versus separated sewers. I mean, is there a rule or a law in this city, all new construction must have separated sewers versus the way it usually has been, as you said, the 60% are combined? Is there any way of a program to separate the sewers? Or ensure that any new construction has to have separated?
I don't, Denise, I don't think there's a aware, like I don't think there's a like a legal rule on that, but I can check for you. And yeah, I mean, any sewer where capital projects are massive undertaking across the board. So the few ones I know about that are ongoing, like the tanks that I mentioned, or any sewer upgrades we make are, you know, it's people are without water, the streets shut down, it's for multiple months, and the projects take years. So the 10 billion in upgrades coming was a hard fought battle, is my understanding. but I can look up for you if any rules or regulations we have about continued combined versus separate. I'm not completely aware of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and within Community Board 10, we do have a large sewer reconstruction project
Okay.
that's in the queue for 10th Avenue from 76th Street
Okay.
all the way to 86th Street, because that area has really and continues to experience terrible sewer backups and little rain events and heavy rain events, as does the area, I would say, south of 86th Street, or even Bay Ridge Parkway to some degree, from Ridge Boulevard to Shore Road. And each year in our budget priorities, we hear from residents along Colonial and Narrows Road who experience terrible street flooding during wet weather events. And as they're increasing, it becomes so important to us to, we continue to advocate for upgrades in those sewers as well, just to share that with you.
Yeah.
Little
No, thank you.
CB10.
No, it's helpful to write this down and to have you tell me what you were advocating for before, because I think things get lost when things
Mhm.
pass hands, and that's fair.
Right.
I was just with a gentleman at CB7 today who was like, it's just a different face every time, and I'm worried, and I think that's a fair concern. So please, like, make me aware of all of what's supposed to be happening, what is currently happening, what should be happening. So I can make sure on my side that I see it that
No,
way
we
as well.
will, definitely. Yeah, we certainly
Thank
will,
you.
we'll share that with you. We even did a survey and we had over 100 residents respond who were experiencing sewer backups.
Okay.
So we'll
That's a
certainly
lot.
share that with him, yeah.
Yeah.
Ibrahim has his hand raised?
Ibrahim?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for the presentation. I have two questions. One, City of Yes, which is zoning change and the increase of density in some areas. Did you guys consider that, and what's the update? The second question is more local, where backflow prevention system. I'm talking about the backflow that comes from the city into people's homes. Does it work, the backflow preventer? And if it does, from your experience or from your guys' resources, is there any program from the city to help? Because I know some of the insurances, they do not help the homeowners for that. Is there any program for or any intensives or any help from DP in case of backflow from the city sewer into basements?
Yeah,
And
I think the biggest thing there is the flooding insurance that I mentioned on the slide, and I agree with you, and will note that not everyone is eligible for it, so that's frustrating. But that's the biggest thing that DEP is, telling folks about sewer backups, because it's still considered a flood and your basement flooding. I'm not sure what a backflow preventer is, or I don't know, Denise, if you've heard that term before.
Yes, dear.
Or if there's anything else I'm missing, but I can like do some research on that, but I don't want to comment on it because I'm not sure what it is. And then with City of Yes, I think I'd have to, and I would ask to see the specific developments you're talking about, et cetera. But in general, increased density isn't and I know this seems counterintuitive, but I've done, like, this question gets asked me all the time, so I've done a lot of research on it. Increased density it's like a fraction, a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of increased sewer use. A storm is like totally like maxes our capacity, like in a major, major, major way. But in a dry weather situation, we're talking about wastewater, the city sewers are able to handle that type of thing. And that's not what really puts us overboard. And so there's a lot of the commissioner has spoken about this publicly a lot, and there's a lot of good math on this, that the biggest things that really overrun the sewer, that really overrun our capacity, and that we're planning upgrades for these super storms and for these storms that come in, because they're really what maxes capacity. Having more apartments or more buildings it just doesn't produce the same amount of water, not even close. And so, not that it's not something we're not concerned about, and not that it's not something we don't take into consideration. And I think they spread around a lot of the city of Yes housing for that reason. You know, we don't want to put all city of Yes in one community board. That would be bad for that particular sewer. But my understanding is it's like not even comparable, and such to the point that we actually need to plan for storms way more than increased density. So I can come back with the numbers on that if you'd like, but I'm like very confident that just from hearing it a lot and talking about it a lot, that that's the case.
Well, since we're home to one of the 14 treatment facilities in the city that has a catchment area of 5 community districts.
Yeah.
That is a question that does come
Yeah.
up, because it's not only additional loads, it is additional loads, not only in our district, but 5 nearby districts. And our plant was built in like 1950.
Yeah.
So, which is another advocacy point that we always want to make sure that it's
People know.
continue to be upgraded and
Yeah.
kept up to date. And I know there's a lot of capital projects in the queue for Owl's Head, but making sure that plant is maintained and that can handle the additional, loads. I know that new buildings require the stormwater capture, but the additional loads on the system, especially in an older plant, it may be different from plant to plant, but since ours is
It is
an
different
older
from
one,
mine.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we were lucky enough to tour the
Mhm.
facility recently, and it is impressive, but it is an older plant and,
Yeah.
anything to help.
Yeah, no, understood. I'm amazed, surprised, and it's frustrating how old a lot of New York's infrastructure is. And so, I'm learning about each of the plants. Brooklyn has the most wastewater treatment plants
Right.
of any borough. So
Yeah.
I'm aware of a lot of them. Yeah.
And to Elizabeth's points, there's also a lot of new businesses coming, in
Yeah.
Sunset
Mhm.
Park and nearby districts.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that all adds to the
To the
processing needs, yes,
Yeah.
treated water.
Mhm.
And then also the medical waste, like we have the hospital right there, which
Mhm.
is not far from the treatment plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that was a good question about the different types.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? No, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say that was an excellent presentation. I
Presentation.
really appreciate it. And we would welcome, anytime you want to come
Come
back.
back.
Oh, I
Yeah.
hope to come back with more specific details, more knowledge. Like every day I get smarter, every day I get better. DEP had never had borough commissioners before, so
Mhm.
it's a big investment
Right.
in, the community boards and the elected officials and trying to be better and more responsive. So I hope to continue to do that and be back with more
Great.
answers.
Excellent.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
All right, everyone.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a